Hey, this is Sandy Peterson, and here we're going to talk about our super secret special faction. It is, in fact, the Azathoth faction. Now, Azathoth faction is unlike any other faction in the game because, in a sense, he's not really a faction. He's neutral. So his monsters and god and spellbooks are not played by a single player. They're shared among all the factions. Basically, it's on a first-come, first-served basis. So first, we're going to talk about his monsters, then his spellbooks, and finally Azathoth itself. So the monsters. He has neutral monsters, such as the Star Vampire here. The way it works is that if you want to earn one of the neutral monsters, during the Doom phase, you pay 2 Doom points. And then normally, you get to take one of the monsters and place it on the map at one of your gates. So let's say that you are, oh, I don't know, the white player, because I happen to have one of his factions, okay? It's the Doom phase. You pay 2 Doom points, you get a Star Vampire. You also take the loyalty card of the Star Vampires, which tells what their special ability is, and for the rest of the game, Star Vampires are your monster. No one else can summon them, no one else gets to control them, they're just for you. This is true of the other monsters as well, with one notable exception, which we'll get into. So let's talk about Star Vampires first. Pay 2 power, 2 Doom, get your first free Star Vampire. Future Star Vampires cost you 2 power each. For example, if that one's killed, you pay 2 power to resummon it. They have a combat of 1. So for such a huge figure, that may not seem very good. If they only cost 2, they roll 1 die. Who wants that crappy monster? You do. Here's why. In battle, you roll the Star Vampire dice separately, okay, from the others. Each pain the Star Vampire scores drains 1 power out of the enemy faction into yours, directly added to your power. Each kill they score drains 1 Doom point from the enemy faction directly onto yours. It still counts as a kill or a pain too. Now if the enemy faction doesn't have any Doom points, doesn't have any power, you get nothing for it. But you can see 2 of these things roll 2 dice. You have a pretty good chance of scoring at least power, and you might get a Doom point. So they're pretty scary because you can get Doom points and power with them. It doesn't take long for them to pay for themselves. And another way they pay for themselves is enemy players tend to not want to go fight where they are because they're going to drain power, and no one likes losing power. And hey, you might roll a 6 and get a Doom point, right? So they're kind of discouraging to go fight. And if they are killed, they only cost 2 to replace, so who cares? Okay, Dimensional Shamblers. They're little guys like this. They cost 2. Of course, the first one's always free because it's an independent monster. You pay 2 Doom points and get a free one. And then from then on, they cost 2 power each. Now, their combat is 2, which is pretty good for a 2-point monster. But here's their ability. When you summon a Dimensional Shambler, you don't place it on the map. You place it on your faction card. Okay? And then, after any action by any player, you can place 1 or more factions from your faction card, 1 or more Shamblers, anywhere on the map. So say you have 2 of them on your card like this, and enemy players are doing things that you disapprove of. Like, for example, the Shoggoth's coming to capture your guy. You say, well, he moves there to capture my guy. On my turn, I'm dropping a 1-dimensional Shambler off here, and I think I'll drop the other one off here to molest his cultist who's all alone by himself. Once they're on the board, they're like any other monster. They can get killed and stuff, but in the meantime, they're roaming reserve. You drop anywhere you want, and they can be, pop out of nowhere, and suddenly there's a Shambler. And they roll 2 dice, which isn't bad. Okay, Elder Things. Again, first one's free. They have a combat of 2. They cost 3, which may make them seem not super wonderful, because that's a pretty expensive monster, but they are wonderful. Not only because, again, the first one only costs Doom points, but also because of the special ability, which is Mind Control. If a Elder Thing is in an area with an enemy Great Old One, that Great Old One can't use its special ability. Now, it can still use its faction ability, it can still use spell books, but for example, Cthulhu here in this area, and I made reference to this sort of obliquely when I was doing the Cthulhu run, Cthulhu doesn't get his Devour ability. He doesn't auto-kill one of the units in the area when there's an Elder Thing. Okay? Another example. Hastur doesn't get his Vengeance ability. He doesn't pick where the dice go. Shub-Niggurath can't avatar in or out of an area with an Elder Thing. the king in yellow can't desecrate in the area. Every Great Old One, Azathoth isn't a gate when he's there. So the Great Old Ones hate the Elder Things, and you can use them two ways. One, obviously defensively, you put them on an area you want to be more or less safe from Great Old Ones, and they do fine. Plus they're a 2-dice monster, they can kind of defend you. Or you go on the rampage with them and go somewhere where they have a Great Old One to keep him from using his ability. And it's pretty effective. As another kind of esoteric use, you may recall that Ithaqwa's special ability is Ferox, where his cultists are immune to being captured by monsters. Well, if you have an Elder Thing in the area along with Ithaqwa, then his cultists all over the board are no longer immune to capture, because there's an Elder Thing with Ithaqwa. So keep that in mind. So Elder Things, very handy. And of course their precise usefulness depends on which Elder Things you're facing and what your situation is. Okay, the last one. This is the strangest of them all. This is the Servitor of the Outer Gods. Costs 2 Doom to get the loyalty card, but you don't get a free Servitor. But you don't want one, because when you activate the Servitors, you don't take them. Instead, you pick another player, and he gets the Servitors and their loyalty card. And for the rest of the game, they're his monster. So why does he care? Here's why. Servitors cost 1 to summon. Their combat is -1. They roll -1 die. Now, if they're alone in the area, that means they don't roll any dice. But if you're, say that you're Cthulhu and you're stuck with the Servitors, so you come here to fight this cultist. Well, your Shoggoth normally rolls 1 die, 2 dice, but with the Servitor, he just rolls 1 die. Thank you, Servitor. You might want to use Absorb to eat your Servitor, but you don't, and here's why. Because the special ability of Servitors is that if you own the Servitor loyalty card, you can't summon any monsters except Servitors if you have any Servitors still in your pool. So until you get all 3 Servitors on the map, that's all you can summon. And then they're sitting there weakening your points everywhere. Now they do work as a monster. They can capture cultists if the cultists are alone. They can take a hit for you. They're only a 1-point monster. So but the fact that they lower your combat and you can't summon anything else is pretty much a pain. So they're not pleasant to have, though sometimes you can find some use out of them. However, players act like they're really precious, which is pretty adorable. They're like, oh, I must preserve my Servitors. I can't let them die. I must guard them. And the reason is, of course, because they don't want to have to summon them again instead of other monsters. But the appearance in the game for a person who doesn't know the secret is like, why do you love your Servitors so much? And the answer is, I don't love them. I hate them, but I have to. They sit around making my guys dance and playing their flute instead of working hard. So they have a little extra mouth that's laughing and singing along with it. So they're pretty cool. Okay, let's talk about the spell books. Okay, in the Azathoth expansion, by the way, there's the Dreamlands unit expansions, monster expansions. These neutral monsters work pretty much the same way as the Azathoth ones. You pay 2 Doom, you get the monster loyalty card, you get the monster list of the game. So if you want to get the Nori or the Gugs or some of the other monsters you may have seen in our other examples, they work just like these. So that's how it is. Okay, the spellbooks. Azathoth comes with 6 neutral spellbooks. The way they work is when you earn any spellbook, say for example you are the Black Goat and you've just gone into 4 areas. You can either choose to take one of your own spellbooks, or you can take one of the Azathoth spellbooks and put it on your sheet. Your choice. So this really mixes up your strategies. Now let's talk about all the things you can get in this. So first there is Umar Tawil. Gates now cost you 2 power to build instead of 1. Obviously super valuable. What? Instead of 3. Sorry. Yeah, that would not be very useful, would it? They cost 2 power to build instead of 3. This is obviously really good in the early game, not so great later on, but always useful. Next, the stars are right. During Gather Power, if you turn in Elder Signs for Doom points, you also get power equal to the face value of the card, of the token. So this is good later in the game when you're starting to get Elder Signs. You can turn them in and get power. Of course, it exposes what your Doom rating is, but hey, free power, right? So another handy spell, this time better in the late game. And remember, anyone can have any one of these. So you might want to pick which spellbook you're going to live without of your regular faction. So can Cthulhu get by without Dreams? I don't know. Is Dreams better or worse than Umar Tawil or Stars Are Right? That's up to you to decide. Most players, I find, get maybe 1 or 2 of the Azathoth spellbooks. Usually not more than that, because they want to use their own spellbooks for other things. Okay, next, the Mao ceremony. At the end of Gather Power, before Determine First Player phase happens, you can sacrifice your own cultists. Just take them off the map and give yourself a point of power for each cultist you sacrifice. You may ask yourself, why would I do this? Well, there's two important reasons. One is, sometimes you're just a point or two short of the actions you need to take for that round. Say, for example, you really want to summon your Azathoth, but you see you only have 9 power. Well, use the Mao ceremony, sacrifice a guy, now you got 10 power, you can summon your Azathoth. The other reason is it's quite common for 2 players to be really close for first player. Okay, or even tied. So you and Crawling Chaos may both have 10 power, and you think they're not, and you're not sure you're going to be first player. Well, you sacrifice a cultist, get 1 power, now you're first player for sure. And it didn't really cost you anything, because you can use that extra power you spent to become first player to resummon the cultist on your turn. So it's sort of like a power battery. You know, sacrifice cultists, summon them back, be first player every turn if you want, assuming that it's close enough to do that. That's the Mao ceremony. Okay, Undimensioned. This is an action that costs 2. It lets you rearrange all your units among all your areas however you please. You can't enter any new areas, but you can completely empty an old area if you want. So usually when people get this spellbook, they only use it once or twice during the game, but it's very useful when they do use it. So much to move it around. It lets you get clear across the map, set things up. It's a obviously anything. It's good for every faction. Yellow Sign loves it because it lets them get the King in Yellow with his armies back to a continent they need to be at. Ithaca loves it because he can move his Death Army across the world. It's just everyone enjoys this ability. So Undimensioned. Next to last, Shriveling. So it's a pre-battle ability. Select 1 enemy unit, enemy monster, or cultist involved in the battle. That unit, before the battle starts, that unit's killed, and the owner gets power equal to the unit's cost. So for example, let's say that here this terrifying Shoggoth is coming to attack your feeble cultist. And he wants to attack you instead of capture you because I don't know why, he just is. Before battle you say, Shriveling! He's dead. Cthulhu gets 2 power. Now Cthulhu gets 2 power, so he can't completely complain, but the fight's over. And it didn't cost you anything. You're like, hey, if you want to get me, resummon your stupid guy for the 2 points I just gave you, and then march back in if you want, and then I'll do it again. So, you know, Shriveling. Now it only works on 1 monster at a time, so if Cthulhu is smart enough to come in with 2 monsters, then you can only shrivel 1 of them. But, you know, then they gotta, if you do shrivel 1 of them, like this time the star spawn, he's gotta reappear back where he has a gate, and it's a pain, so Shriveling. Okay, the last spellbook. I saved it for last because it's weird, like I always do. Recriminations. It's an action and it costs 1. It lets you remove a spellbook from your fraction's sheet and replace it with another available spellbook. So for example, and it includes this spellbook. So you can remove a spell, so say for example you think you're going to want to use, I don't know, Undimensioned only once in the game. So you use it, then you invoke Recriminations, remove Undimensioned from your spellbook, put it back in the pool, and get one of your own spellbooks, such as Submerge or Thousand Young or whatever, and place that instead. You can also get rid of this one. One of the common things also used for is Umrat Towel, where gates cost you 2 to build. Like I mentioned, in the late game, this often isn't valuable because you're not building that many gates. But you get Recriminations, you can get rid of Umrat Towel when it's not useful anymore, and replace it with something else that is. So Recriminations, also if you realize you made a horrible mistake in the spellbooks you chose. And you can even swap out your own spellbooks. For example, say that you got Groth early, then you realize you don't want a Groth, you want Necrophagy or Frenzy. Well, you can use this to swap those out. And, you know, change your spellbooks on the fly. So it lets you be flexible with what spellbooks you have. And you can do it again and again. So this turn you have Groth, next turn you have Necrophagy, next turn you have Groth again. Costs you 1 power each time you do it. Okay, now let's talk about Azathoth. The most complicated Great Old One of them all, really. Now, every neutral Great Old One has similar rules. They all have some special awakening rule, and the first person to awaken them gets them. Now, unlike neutral monsters, you can lose a Great Old One. Once you get a monster, that monster's loyal for the rest of the game. But you get a monster, if that Great Old One is killed, then he goes back into the pool, and the next person to summon him gets him, even if it's not you. Also, every neutral Great Old One comes with its own unique spellbook just to it. Now these 6 spellbooks I talked about, the neutral Azathoth spellbooks, it's not one of them. It's its own Azathoth, the Great Old One spellbook. And when they meet the requirements for this spellbook, then you take it, you place it on, this is our mock-up of the loyalty card. So you take your loyalty card, you meet his spellbook requirements, you put his special spellbook there, and then you get that ability as long as you control him. Now if he's killed, so you lose control of him, he goes back into a neutral thing, then the spellbook falls off his card, and the card becomes available. Next person to summon him, even if he's you, has to re-earn the spellbook all over again. So be aware of that. Azathoth, however, is kind of hard to use. The way you do Azathoth is, you must have a certain amount of power, in this case 8, and you have to have a Great Old One at your gate. So here's a gate with a Great Old One. It's the wrong color, tough. There's a random number generated to determine how much power is spent to summon Azathoth. You pay that, it never is more than 8, that's why you have to have 8 power available, you can't fail. You pay that amount of power, and Azathoth appears! Yay, I guess. Now when he appears, every enemy player takes a die and conceals it with a number from 1 to 6. You don't do this, you just tell them to do it. Then at the same time, they all reveal their number. Now, each enemy player receives power equal to what he reveals. So you're thinking, shouldn't they all reveal a 6? Because that way they each get 6 power. And the answer is kind of, except there's a problem. The number total, you add it together, and you have a special Azathoth marker. You place the Azathoth marker in the Doom track, and that's how many dice Azathoth rolls. So for example, if you're playing a 4-player game, and the 3 other players each pick a 6, Azathoth is at 18. He rolls 18 dice. Usually they hate that. So now you're thinking, well, why don't they just all pick a 1 so you're on those 3 dice, and they only get 1 power each, but hey, Azathoth's weaker. And the answer is this. Because the person or persons that reveal the lowest die lose 2 Doom points for not supporting Azathoth properly. So for example, let's say that one player picks a 4, and 2 of the players each pick a 2 in a 4-player game. Well, Azathoth goes to the 8 marker, and the 2 players that each pick 2 get 2 power and lose 2 Doom points each because they're tied for lowest player. And the guy who picked a 4 gets 4 power, doesn't lose any Doom points. Azathoth's at 8. If they all 3 pick 6 because they're greedy, they each get 6 power, but they also each lose 6 Doom points because they're tied for lowest.
2 Doom points.
2 Doom points. Sorry, 2 Doom points. So Azathoth gives other players a power boost, so they love him. He can cost them Doom points, so they hate him. And he gives you lots of combat dice, so you love him. And his special ability that he always has is that when he takes a kill in combat, instead of dying, you roll a dice and lower the Azathoth marker by that much. So if the Azathoth marker is in, say, 12, he takes a kill, you can't assign more than 1 kill to him. He takes a kill, or 1 pain. You roll a die, say you got a 3. He goes from 12 to 9. Now he only rolls 9 dice, but he's not dead yet. Next time he fights, maybe you roll a 4 for a kill on him. He goes 9 down to 5 dice, and it keeps going. It takes a long time to kill him. And in the meantime, he's rolling tons of dice, especially if they foolishly all picked 6s. So Azathoth is a real combat monster that is a pain for them to deal with, as you'd want him to be. Okay, his spellbook. You earn his special spellbook when every faction has a Great Old One in play. Okay, experienced player, this happens pretty early. Inexperienced players, it might take a while, but eventually everyone has a Great Old One, and then you get his spellbook. And his spellbook is Nuclear Chaos. It's an action that costs 0. Here's how it works. Azathoth's in play, every player rolls a d6. The player that has the highest roll gets that much power. The player or players with the lowest roll get that many Elder Signs. You, the owner of Azathoth, get to add or subtract 1 from your die roll. Okay? Now, flip the spellbook face down after you do it. It can't be used again that turn. So it's kind of like 1,000 forms in that sense. Then next gather power, it flips face up again. For example, let's say that everyone's rolling the dice, you roll a 6, and you're the guy that controls him. Well, you can choose to add 1 to it. Your dice is now 7. That means it's the highest die roll, obviously, on a 6-sided die, so you get 7 power. And some other guy rolled 1 or 2 as the lowest. Hey, he gets 1 or 2 Elder Signs. So the people who rolled in the middle get nothing. So they're just sad. So the extremes get power or Elder Signs, and you get a big advantage. Say everyone rolled 4 by some mischance and you're one of them. You could either add 1 to your die roll to roll 5 and get 5 power, or subtract 1 from your die roll to roll 3 and get 3 Elder Signs. That's Azathoth. Remember, if you do manage to kill Azathoth, which is not trivial, then someone else can summon him and start taking advantage of him. Okay, that is the Azathoth faction. It's not really a faction, it's a mess of stuff for everyone to use, and so everyone can have fun with getting parts of it. Usually each player gets one of their monsters. Someone has the first guy that need it gets Azathoth. The spells are scattered around, and it just changes the play because everyone's strategy is different. Because there's a new monster for your faction, or 2. There's new spell books you can choose and see how they fit into your own stuff. And it's very exciting. Oh, Lincoln just pulled out Bokrug the Water Lizard. So there's Bokrug. See how nice he looks. He's an interesting Great Old One because he's another independent Great Old One. Works like Azathoth in that first person to summon him gets him, and if he's killed, you don't get him anymore. He's actually pretty hard to kill, and he's sort of like the servitors of the Outer Gods, in that the faction that has him is punished for it. So when you get Bokrug, you tend to eventually give him away to someone else, and then they're stuck with Bokrug, and they don't like it. And so that was a little wandering aside from the main thrust of Azathoth. But Azathoth, hey, hope you liked it.